So good morning. Welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley's Sunday Forum. My name is Matt Courtney, and I am a recorder and a member of the board of the Humanist community. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist community if you've not already done so. Membership forms are available on our website at humanists.org. That's humanists plural. If you are listening for the first time, welcome, and we invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events. You can find all our events listed on the website, humanists.org. Please aid us in continuing to present these forums by donating to the Humanist community. You can find out how to donate to our organization on the website, humanists.org. And I want to reiterate that even though we are not renting a space at the moment, we still have expenses, and we would greatly appreciate your donations to cover those expenses. Hopefully, our treasurer will post the address where you can send checks, donation checks to our organization. He's not yet done that, but hopefully, I think he's here. Pretty sure I saw him. But hopefully he'll do it soon. Our speaker today is Allan Griff. He will be talking on Does Science Scare Us or Challenge What We Already Are? Allan Griff, in his little bio that I have, he is an unretired senior. Hopefully he will explain what that means, but or unretired chemical engineer specifically from this slide, an anthropologist and parent. So Allan, let me unmute you. So take it away.
Okay. Well, I take some of it away. I hope here to leave some here, whatever some is. That's the object of the talk. What I meant probably by an unretired senior is that being a senior means I got to stay in the house even more than those other people. And unretired is that I never had anything to retire from. I was not officially and fully employed since I was 28. And the details of that would be less significant and carry us beyond our times. But at any rate, I am a chemical engineer. I am also an anthropologist. And those are the three things I thought were the most important things. The other things happen. I'm 87, just so anybody cares when I talk about senior. But some people don't believe it. I do. I can't help it. So I remember things like the Second World War and stuff like that. I'll go on to the next slides. The question, does science scare us? Kind of the answer is yes, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. Next slide will give a few of some of my basic philosophies. I think the word has been used. And it's very appropriate now because we have this clash. I'm sure Sunday morning, whatever all the programs are, as soon as I'm finished, I can go on my little smartphone actually and go look for the news and who said what this morning. But science has been on the defensive, and as particularly in the medical field. And it's not we have to follow science at all costs, or we have to follow our normal societies, and that's a plural on purpose, at all costs. But compromise is always very hard to do, and that's what we're trying to do. The second thing that comes out of anthropology study is the concept of cultural evolution, whereas the concept of evolution usually and correctly is associated with Darwin and biological evolution. The time frames are much shorter. Things can happen in a generation, or in our case, maybe in a week. But cultures can change and people can follow because of communication. I didn't put it down here, but one of my patron saints, if you will, is Alvin Toffler. Many of you have heard of him. Many of you have read his books. His original book, A Future Shock, was very important when I was a grad student and in that period of my time. But I point to the book called The Third Wave, which he wrote later, but to me prophetically. And it's worth mentioning because it is appropriate. He said that there were three waves in civilization, development of civilization, that basically changed the way people live, and particularly where people live. The first, he said, was the agricultural revolution, which meant that people learned how to corral animals and use them when they needed them. And secondly, they learned if you put seeds in the ground, they grow, and you got to stay around where they grow, otherwise you can't eat what you have planted. So that led to the development of cities and stratification of labor and a few other things. That was the first primary revolution. The second, he said, was the Industrial Revolution, which can be started with things like navigation tools, the invention, the management of glass. The Romans had glass too, but the theory there is that because we had telescopes and microscopes, that set out much of the Industrial Revolution. And of course, it goes on to plows and steam engines and boats and planes, things like that. The third revolution, and that changed the way people live and where people live. The third revolution is communication, and we're in that now. We're using it now, and that is also changing the way people live and where they live. I'm sitting in El Cerrito, and I'm talking to you, and you are somewhere 40 or 50 miles from me, and it doesn't make any difference. And I can send this, I get a chance to find out where it streams, to my children who are 3,000 or 800 or 2,500 miles away. Doesn't matter. And things like that represent the fact that we can communicate all over as easily 40 miles as 4,000. And that's the third wave, and we're in it now. And surfers, beware, because it is, what do they say, a high surf or an unpredictable surf. I'm not sure where it's going to lead us, but we're here. So much for Toffler. Didn't even get on my slide here, but I think his observations were very important. The last thing is the concept of cultural fertility. This applies to the concept of leadership, which is certainly discussed a lot and important. And my principle here, which I credit actually to the Swiss psychologist Piaget, but I don't know where he got it from. At any rate, leaders don't lead, they follow. Leaders figure out which way the tide is going and get out in front and say, come on. Or they sense the thing that they're supposed to lead. It clashes with the communications revolution, because sometimes you don't know where everything is flowing. I'll leave you with that. But the concept of cultural fertility says that certain things grow in the people, and the leaders may speak what the people want. There are many, many examples. Any of you who are historians or history students can come up with one. But the concept of cultural fertility, how cultures can produce their leaders, is interesting and is important, certainly today. So I thought I'd get these three comments out at the beginning. And some of them, there are only 15 slides. And I'm going to try to get us finished by 12 or so, which is, I think, the intent. And I will go to the next one. Okay, this is, I guess, both of these are little philosophical things. It's very easy to assume that we live by either A, B, or C. But the truth is that they are interactive. That's why the word interaction up there. We are dealt a hand with genetics and our upbringing. Then things, that happened. I did this. I'm kind of proud that I don't make spelling errors, but I do. And I think that's the proof of none of us being perfect. Things that happen should have been in there. Things that we don't have any control over happen to us. We will meet people. There will be wars, illnesses. weather blocked by mine, maybe by yours too. I can either turn these little pictures off or leave them on. Okay, I'm going to leave them on. Anyway, these three aren't all equal. No one is always dominant. This speaks to the fatalist, says that we have no control. It's karma. It's whatever it is. But it isn't. Our decisions matter. And this speaks to the person that says, I get what I want, or I want what I get, or what I do matters, and that's the important thing. And even that is not always dominant. It's sobering to look at these three, and I do frequently, and to balance them. If I have a favorite word, I don't even like the idea of favorite. If I have a favorite word, it's balance. It's very hard. The Wisdom of Insecurity is by Alan Watts. It's up there because there's a number of books in which you don't have to read, which the title tells it all. And this deals with the concept of insecurity, which frees us from the need to be certain. Do you have the same, those of you with little pictures, the right hand end is blocked? Maybe I should take them off. I don't know what you have, and you're all muted. Hide thumbnail video. So now I hope everybody can see all the words on there, and I can't see everybody's faces.
Hopefully people can manage their screen. I actually took it out of full screen for those who are interested, thinking you just hit escape, and that's just a window inside my Zoom.
All right, I'm going to leave it as is anyway, and if I want them, I can click where it says, no, I don't know how to get them back, but anyway. Oh yeah, here's how to get them back. All right, anyway, I point up the Wisdom of Insecurity. If you're looking for something to read and you haven't read it already, tell me what it says, because I read it a long, long time ago, but it was important because I brought up the term, it brings up the term wisdom and insecurity together and reminds us that we don't have to be certain. This is not easy. We often have this drive to be right or not to look wrong. And I'll let the social psychologist take that here, but it's also important in our attitude towards science. Science is sometimes obsessed with being right and being, I see this in scientists at least as much as in anti-scientists. People are committed. There is another quote that says commitment is the hallmark, I think, hallmark of anyway, it's you can be too committed, but then people who aren't committed don't get anything done. So there's a balance involved here. Commitment drives people, but it can drive people to block out things and block out others. All right, next slide is the beginning of my point or theory or hypothesis, whatever you want, that we start out non-scientific. We start out believing nothing. Things happen. We are born, we go wah wah, we cry, we get food, we get held, we get comforted, sometimes not. At the beginning, we don't understand anything. Everything is supplied. And this is the origin, or an origin, and some of you may have dealt with this theory, of the concept of a god or gods, because things happen. You don't have to understand why they happen. And starting from that purpose, that point, science is the intruder, which is the basis of this talk, really, is that science is intruding on our beliefs that things happen. Something happens, usually good if we survive. The concept of let them cry versus pick them up reminds me to tell you of one of my own episodes when my first child was about 6 months old. And parents talk about these things. What did you put them to sleep, you're rocking them, you're singing them a song, and they're happy. You put them in the crib and they go, wow, wow. So you pick them up, and that shuts them up immediately. And you're walking around singing more songs or telling anybody, or today on the cell phone, I don't know what people do. But I am a singer and tried to comfort this kid, and it works. Pick him up and he stops lying. Put him back in the crib, wow, wow, wow. So I once tried to see how long he would stay in the crib. This is what the parents talk about. Some people were the let him cry group, and the others were pick him up group. And you question who gets tired first. The kid very often will outlast you, depending on how tired you are and when you have to get up the next morning. This is part of the compromise. The kid learns one way or the other that he can't always get what he wants by going wah, wah, wah. And things aren't that perfect, and we learn more and more and more that everything is a kind of a negotiation. Cause and effect, coping methods, those are terms that are used. But still, we, and I will say everybody, has some need to believe the impossible. Something will happen. And that word security has become very important to me, as insecurity. And I define science, I have trouble defining science, and it's not the perfect definition, but I'm concerned with the physical rules. Is one pole of the globe, I create a concept of a globe with science at one end and believing the impossible is at the other. And I was very critical as a scientist. My basic science training is chemistry. And I was very concerned at the beginning of thinking about this kind of stuff with, believing the impossible is wrong. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. Until somebody gave me the word hope. That's what hope is based on. And yes, it's hope that Las Vegas gambling. It's hope that somebody will recover from an illness that is normally fatal. There's a lot of places where hope works. It's sometimes, I think, sports fans hope that the Raiders might stay in Oakland or something like that. There are places, maybe it belongs there rather than in very serious issues. But science is one end of it, the reality, the physical rules. One of my kids argues that with me. He says, you don't know all the physical rules, and science discovered things today that they didn't know last week or last month. I said, that's true, but I have to base actions in life on the rules that I know. And then we might argue about something else. But he has the capacity and I think courage to argue with his father, which is not always the case. So I listen to him, I learn from him. Anyway, people fall in between the rules and the impossible, and the location, meaning where you are in between, isn't constant. You're not placed there at 25 and you say, well, that's the way I'm going to be the rest of my life. Because things happen with age, and you perceive your security differently, partly with age, partly with responsibility, partly with health, things like that. So perceived security is the phrase that I'm putting in there. And the fact that science is impersonal. And this, to me, is really, really critical, because our interpersonal relations matter, and our self-image matters. And a lot of what we do is based, conscious or not, on access to assets. Money is one thing. I include both income and wealth, which are definitely not the same. Ask Congress right now. Physical strength matters. If you're large, you don't get bullied around. That might be. I was and am a big person. I have to think about what it might be to be a bully victim, to be a little wimp. And they can't help it. This is the hand they're dealt by genetics. Appearance, clothes you wear, things like that, social status. All of these things matter and are personal. They're involved in interpersonal relations. Science says, or the rules say, gravity works, 9.8 something, something per meter per squared. Anyway, I used to know that one by heart. Science doesn't care. And that's very hard to swallow and hard to digest, because we're constantly living interpersonally with ourselves, our workmates, our children, and today more the society itself. I've actually met my congressperson, and many of us can now, and certainly see on the screen I'm looking at right now, interpersonal relations. Science can't care because it isn't personal. And this is a kind of basic to the reason why I feel that science is resented. It's coming in there and saying, this is Don't ask why, or you can ask why. I'll tell you why. But I use this phrase or the term isness, and that's the next why. Oh no, I got the little German rhyme. Right after that deals with isness. Anybody with a German background, be it Christian or not, this song or this little verse, there is melody to it, is very well known, and I use this as an example of how the concept of all powerfulness is brought in and comforts and depends and has the child depend. The translation is mine. So anybody who is fluent German might question how I did that, but you'll see it and you can read it. I'm tired, I'm going to rest. The use of little, and the difference between Äuglein and Augen, close my little eyes, is a self-reducing thing. And then the great power in the next sentence, the next line, Vater, which is God, lass die Augen, let the eye, your eyes. And that's not little eyes, that's the proper word for eye. So the child who says this quietly to himself when he goes to sleep, perhaps, and is already recognizing the difference between my little eyes and his great, powerful eyes. And the eyes are over my little bed. You admit you've done wrong, you ask for forgiveness, you ask for forgiveness because you can get it. Or maybe not, but you get the parent and the God conflated there. Forgive me, and then the last is just the recognition of this power that is protecting. All people, big and small, will be protected by you. It's hard to define befohlen, and anybody who is really interested in that, send a message or something like that. But that was the one word I had the most trouble in translating or in putting into this term, into this little verse. There are other verses too. Anybody who actually got this as a child might know some of the other verses, but this has the section that I want to show to illustrate the childhood awe, as AWE, that goes on. We have it in English too, some of which will recognize this when I was just able to copy and cut and paste this bedtime prayer. It's remarkably similar. It says things like, forgive the wrong things I do. It brings in the concept of a soul. It starts the same thing, I lay me down to sleep, and maybe to finish, I'm tired. The Germans say they're tired. This one just says now. This one happens to be Christian. I've seen it in non-Christian form in English too. Doesn't matter. It's recognizing this supreme protector. Next one, I hope, is the isness. Yeah. Things just are. And that's what I called isness. And I gave you something here that is, if you've seen it, you know about it. If you haven't, it's kind of fun. This is a puzzle about isness. That is that is not that is not that is not that is not that is. Sounds silly, except that there is a punctuation possible. There are several forms, several answers, but I had to give you the answer so you don't spend 10 minutes finding it. Or if you want to deal with somebody else and give it to them without the answer, I put it on a separate slide. That is. That is not is not. That is not that is not. That is not that is. I looked as far back as I could, and I did find that is in Shakespeare. And that is the best I can do for origin, but it's not new. It is what I call the existential puzzle. And since I'm dealing with humanists and religion, or the absence or the replacement of, I relate this childhood, middle age separation here. And this, I did a little research, or suggested actually, and correctly so, look at a couple of other talks. And what they did. And somebody did something called the bathtub curve, which I haven't heard the phrase of, but something where the time is on the lower axis, the x-axis, and intensity is on the y-axis. And you can do this with a bathtub curve also, where in childhood certain things are very important, and as you grow older, this curve slopes down, 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 and then at the end it comes up again. Anyway, you'll see this is things that we see. I think I've done childhood well. Oh yeah, the security is also connected to belonging. Belonging to groups, you start out belonging to a family. You have trouble if you don't. It is something that most humans can recover, but it's a lifelong scar if you don't have anything to belong to and still stay alive. These phrases, we do what we need to do to belong, governs and drives a lot of our actions. And we believe what we want to be true. That's comfort. Possibility, I should have put this in a separate line, possibility and physical rules don't matter, because the drive to believe what we want to be true is very strong. And then, of course, science comes in and says, well, wait a minute, truth is rules. Truth is physical rules. Truth is sometimes even social rules. And we're in that middle position. One of my points that I sometimes get argued with is I like to look at anybody who disagrees and ask why. My favorite question, which bothers some people, excites others. I hope it certainly appeals to you people who are listening now. If I understand my detractors, I'm going to learn. I didn't mean argue with them, just understand them. Listen, observe. In the middle years, explaining means less. We belong to groups. We are in, explain this, stability, mutation, tension. I thought I would use, I was not afraid to use this pair of words, but I had to define it. School and parents are a good example. The school and the parents are the stability. They tell you what was, as well as what is. Personal freedom says, I want to do what I want. It reacts, and it's worse now because the conditions that our children are growing up in are different from the conditions we grew up in. So we're saying we try differently, but we're held back by school and parents, but we're pushed forward, what I call mutation. We're pushed forward by the desire to be different, to distinguish oneself. Destacarse, if anybody speaks Spanish, it's a word that's used better there than this distinguish oneself. It has this double meaning of becoming important. Differentiate might be a better word. Anyway, you can have the analogy of an anchor versus the sails. The sails gets the boat moving. The anchor makes it stop where it needs to stop. Without anchor or sails, there is no direction. Accept versus doubt is another pair of simplifying pair of words in the stability mutation. And today, I'm when it's appropriate, fond of saying right wing, left wing, polarization, right, left. A bird needs two wings to fly and a head in the middle to tell it where it's going. And to the right people, that says, oh yeah, that's good. And sometimes to other people, I will not say that because it will challenge the extreme position of right wing or left wing. But I still say you need two wings. In these middle years, values are stable, but they may change when children come. It's not a nice, smooth bathtub curve with a nice round bottom. There's a bump in there. And when children come, you become the next generation up. You become responsible for them, and the relationship with one's parents changes. That's a life crisis. That's one of the reasons I put the word parent in my front page, because I think being a parent, having been a parent, we're all children, but having been a parent is not open to everybody or closed. Some people shouldn't be or don't want to be. So I'm not saying one should, but if one does, there is a basic change in the feeling of position in the sequence of birth, life, and death. And it's social connected, it's economic connected. And today, I don't know about perceive, things are changing very fast to the point where 20-year-olds look at 16-year-olds as a different generation. Now, that's an extreme, but certainly we keep naming the generation, the Z generation, baby boomers, and the distance between these generations is reducing. There's a lot to be said and has been said about that. I'm not going to go there now because of time limitation. I see, give myself a 10-second break to see what time it is. Don't time me. Quarter hour. Later. I'm okay, and I think I'll end before 12. Not too many slides left. But I want to make sure. Okay, we got to get to old age, because I'm there and many of you are there, and it's definable in many different ways. I'm not going to start there. But we begin to question again. Our families break up, our children are either gone or not gone, and that's quite important. Whether we have access to children, access to grandchildren. I was asked by my class correspondent, or we were, people in my class, the person was looking to find something to put in her column. And she said, what do you enjoy, or what about when you visit or talk with your grandchildren? And people wrote in things like, oh, I enjoy taking them on this or going there. And I wrote in saying, basically, my grandchildren are so far apart from me that I can be polite to them, I can do things for them, but they don't do much for me because I live in a different generation. And she said, you want me to publish that? I said, that's up to you. But that's my answer. A lot of things, at least in my age, I start questioning again because I don't know. I don't need less guidance. I got plenty of guidance. And the guidance is how to behave is constantly now challenged. Everything from political correctness to get out there and protest, I don't care how old you are, and many other impacts. Something in place. What am I? The word is escaped. Whatever we're doing now helps because I don't have as many decisions to make. I don't decide whether I'm going to go here or not. My excuse is I'm vulnerable. I'm going to stay home, and that's my guidance. Other people wouldn't have that guidance. We may change from the past. I thought about using the word deviate because it's got a second connotation. All I mean is it's change, past behavior, because now I've got much more freedom. I don't have to get up at 6 to make sure my kid gets to school at 7:10 because I was the driver. A lot of things like that are gone. The children actually aren't gone. I was the one who was gone. Many of us retire from something we did every day, but it gives lots of options to people who didn't have them before. Or we get demented either a little bit at a time, like my forgetting that particular word. I'm going to remember. Or severe, more functionally significant dementia, and sometimes both. We have more freedom, we can do what we want, and we don't know where we are, and we go walking out in the streets, and we all know people, and some of us, I think we have to recognize that it's a little or a lot, it's never none. And if I've gotten as far as I can and can't remember occasional words and names, I'm grateful. Not sure to whom. Maybe to not going to any extremes, but that's deviating from what I'm saying. Anyway, the point is in old age, the curve goes up again. We are more at sea, more unknown, more scared, and more secure at the same time. I just ask a couple of questions here without answering them. But if you get a few phrases out in front of you, the phrase here, I should have underlined it, is distort reality. I say to people, we need to distort reality to stay functionally sane. They say, really? I want reality. I want to see it all, or I'm afraid of reality, or something that shows that. Those are poles. I think that we need reality. That's the science part of it, I suppose. But we can't live on one nutrient. Diet people like to do that, where I'm only going to eat protein, or I'm only going to eat vegetables, I'm only going to eat this, or something like that. That's a distortion of the reality of our digestive system. But sometimes it works. Sometimes it fills a need. And the need is distraction, and maybe others that you all can figure out. So I asked the question, but I put in the phrase of the need to distort reality, and I underline the word need, because that justifies a lot of apparently illogical behavior. And okay, so when science challenges what we are or need, it is logically feared and resented. I call that logic. If people need to do something to make them function, make them sane, make them comforted, make them work, as I don't mean work hard, work for money, I mean functioning work, make this organism work, to me it's logical. And science is feared because it says no magic. Magic is a positive word, at least in our language. We talk about in the Disney world, the Magic Kingdom, and it's something that people look generally positively toward, except for the few people who look at it and say, no, we're scientists. Mystery, okay, magic, no. That's what science says. And I started out that way, or I started out without it, and then I became that way. And I have had to find the middle ground too, where I recognize the function of magic, even if I can't believe it. Last thing, the story doesn't have to be true to be useful. A lot of myths. Greek mythology is a very good example of that. It was about all you could use as themes for operas for a long time. France in the 17th century, if you're a musician, you'll recognize certain things. Because some of the other themes, including even the Christian biblical themes, were too direct, too important. Eventually, you've got that. This is one of the importances of the opera Faust, where the devil comes, and the text being written earlier goes back to the Renaissance, actually. But Goethe popularized that. Now somebody could write an opera, and the man named Gounod can make his entire life. He did a lot of composing, but that's what he's mainly known for. Whether it's true or not doesn't make any difference. To me, anyway, and maybe it does to other people, because the story teaches various lessons. I'm a musical singer, a bass, and the devil sings is a bass in that opera, so I kind of know it. Yeah, I just got this ad of biblical diet, like the paleo diet. Eat what Moses and Methuselah ate. Why? Because they lived a long time, 900 years, and the verbal precision of the Bible is listed. Depends on what you mean by a year. And that gets into the etymology of the word year, and back in Hebrew or Aramaic, whatever it is. You can't defend too much. I can't anyway. The suggestion that I eat what Moses and Methuselah ate, or whatever the Bible ate. The foods were different then, and you can live 40 years on manna. I don't know what they did, and it's better go look and see what the Bible says about what people ate in the desert. There are desert plants you can eat, and it wasn't all desert then, and it doesn't make any difference if it's true or not. What counts to me is I know the human digestive system, and I know that extremes aren't very good for it unless you have a particular ailment that you have to deal with. Now you have my food philosophy. And this is the last of the disturbing or complicated slides. The word make-believe is common, and it's a positive verb. Positive verb. Yeah, I guess the verb. Positive word, and we live it all the time. Those of us, especially now, we're sitting in our homes with a screen, and we watch movies, and Netflix to me is not quite movies. It's the same screen, so I guess for a lot of us it's the same. And plays are there, and Disney has made, the company has made a fortune on make-believe, and mice that talk, and gambling in Las Vegas, Harry Potter, superheroes. We live in a world of make-believe, and our children grow up in it, and our adults manage to compromise with it, but very, very seldom throw it out. And I think if you throw it out consciously, there's still some back inside that doesn't go away. Another positive word in our cultures, our languages, the plural is intentional, is a miracle. And the greater the miracle, the more powerful the one who creates it. So it is tempting, and more than tempting, it is rewarding to believe miracles, because you are recognizing a power. This is the miracle of the food arriving in infancy, writ large. And the last is, I kind of implied about that before, it takes courage to look at people with contrary views, such as science can be wrong, and ask what may drive their opinions. This is what I've done in this little talk, or not so little talk, and I consider that logical. The last slide is a song. Those of you who know Gilbert and Sullivan and who have seen The Mikado, being a scientist, I have to reference 1885 London. And so Gilbert, who wrote the lyrics, talks about things that happen. This is kind of isness too. There's beauty in the bellow of the blast. There's grandeur in the growling of the gale. There's eloquent outpouring when the lion is a-roaring and the tiger is a-lashing of his tail. And there's a chorus. But that's the last verse that, well, let's say, because if it's got earthquakes, it's particularly California relevant. I don't want to get to the last few words. Volcanoes have a splendor that is grim, and earthquakes only terrify the dolts. But to him who's scientific, there is nothing that's terrific in the falling of a flight of thunderbolts. Gilbert is saying there's nothing terrific in science. He's taking sides. He's saying those scientific people, there's nothing special, but I say there's something special in all of this happening, all of this magic, the volcanic splendor, and, well, even the earthquakes. Although in London, I don't think he got very many earthquakes. He's heard about them. Anyway, that's the end of this presentation, and very close to 12. So I think that, to me, this is success when I try to fit a talk into a time slot. Is there a last slide? No, there's a black thing. So I can stop sharing because there isn't any screen, and I get a bunch of people. Now Matt's still there because he's up in the upper left-hand corner.
I'm here. So you ready for some questions?
You got it.
Okay. Some people are clapping.
All right. I'm thanking back. No, I'm here. Okay.
So if you want to ask, if you have a question, please use the raise hand feature. I see Susan.
Okay.
Susan, you're unmuted. It's actually Roy, right? That wants. Oh, you muted yourself.
Oh, I see. I see a Susan that seems to be talking, but
go ahead.
There, okay.
There
now I can hear.
Okay. I just saw a movie last night, Kathy Bates. It's called Crystal on I guess one of the channels, and she made a statement that I think he can wedge in between hope and hard science. she made a statement, and I'm going to adapt it. It's called The Great Perhaps. And I think that's a nice combination of two words.
That's insecurity, the wisdom of insecurity. Things aren't perfect, but anything is possible, maybe.
You got it.
Yeah, maybe there is an interesting word. We have a lot of words for maybe, and other languages have others. Shakespeare even used mayhap somewhere in the 16th century, which I thought was a word. And I remember studying at my age 17, I had these test exams. Today they are whatever.
Thank you.
Exams for college. At any rate, we were reading all of this 16th century stuff, and there were lots of words that I read there that I thought, oh, we can use them today. Mayhap I will see you tomorrow. Well, I don't know I've never heard anybody use the word today. But I remember that was one that I remember. And yes, happening, happenstance, we have the word. I'm going to even put it down and mention it.
Okay, I think that's Helen, but her name's not there. there's a face.
Yeah, I still haven't been able to fix that. I go into meeting and all that stuff and more, and it does not give me the option to change my name, just a bunch of other stuff. I had two quick comments. When you said that mayhap was sort of a combination of maybe and perhaps.
Yeah.
But what I really wanted to say was that thing about that is, etc., that was a puzzle that was presented in the movie Flowers for Algernon, 1968 or 69, when the guy was, this person was supposedly not very bright, and he had to punctuate that on the blackboard, and it looked like a lot of repetitive words.
Oh, yeah, it's not new. I remember I got it actually in those teenage years that I was reading everything, and that brings me back. That's back before 68. That's why I wanted to trace it, because I don't like being thought of as something. There are things that I can create or invent. I put words together, but that one goes back to, well, I remember even a little book. My parents had very few books, but they were very powerful. And that was in one of them.
One other thing is that poem, that prayer. I thought, when I first heard that, and I was not a churchgoer, and I was only a churchgoer for about 8-10 years while I was in college, I think, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep if I should die. No wonder kids don't want to go to bed. They're afraid of dying.
Oh, I saw that version, and I very consciously did not take my shot of that, because that is that's scary. But the idea is to conquer the fear that there is something. Well, somebody else is going to have to define soul for me. But I saw that version. I knew it. When all you do is put something like children's bedtime into a search engine, and it'll come up with endless things. And this was the one that seemed close to my German version. The mother of my children learned this as a child of a German speaker in the household, and each of my kids got this. That's where I got it. And I'm not a native German speaker, but each of my kids got it. And one of them, I mentioned this, I talk about childhood and things to my daughter, who's 43 now, the youngest of the three. She remembered it by heart. She knew it because her mother spoke it to her, gave it to her, I don't know about every night, but for years, or childhood years. And it was an important thing. It was a comforting thing to go to sleep with. And it did not have, if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. It had pretty much what you saw. There's also a morning prayer. And the morning prayer that matches, you get up and the sun is shining. I wonder how this was created in Germany, where mornings much more likely to be cloudy than foggy than sunny, and San Francisco too. Anyway, it's sunny and therefore I'm awake, but before I get up, I have to pray and thank God for my existence or something like that. So you get it coming and going, and it's done right, I guess. It's comforting. I didn't get any of this, and I don't think I was scared. I just had pragmatic parents. Get up, go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And my childhood memories were dealing with mosquitoes at night because we didn't have screens. The things that matter. And
so, David,
I better answer questions and not reminisce too much.
So, David, you have a question?
Well, I noticed, I think it was the second to the last slide. It said, like, science can be wrong. And I talked to a lot of conspiracy theorists in the course of one of the things I do regularly. And when they, like, maybe an anti-vaccine person, I'll be like, well, the scientific consensus is on the side of vaccines. And they'll be like, oh, well, scientists have been wrong before. And I just always have to point out to them that it's usually other scientists who demonstrate that the first person was wrong. And the scientific community will then generally over time fall in line with the new thing, which is correct. So I just like that slide was certainly something I've heard a lot of people say to me.
Yeah, I tend to give an answer. I get that one way or another. I don't think I deal with too many conspiracy theory people, but plenty of people who say science can be wrong because they want to justify, and I try to explain that, justify the feelings that they have, especially the interpersonal relations that they have, because science says it doesn't matter. And I try to use in the middle, you have to look at both sides. And if they are hardened enough, they will not look at the other side. And I find that if I look at their side, you would think they would be happy. Some are. Many are threatened because the act of seeing both sides is threatening.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how dug in someone is, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's the enemy you defend against, I guess. There are people I can't begin to argue with, and I try not to. Then I ask myself, what could I have done to sort of burrow under the foundation? And sometimes I ask myself, why? I serve my own purpose more by understanding the cause of the foundation. Why are people thinking the way they do? That may give me an answer of why I can contribute, but why should I? I can look at seeing what's happening. And, I quantify a lot of things. Numbers matter to me. I somewhat jokingly say that although numbers can sometimes be wrong, at least you've got them written down and you can go back to them. And my little signature, and sometimes at the end of letters, is that the optimist says the cup is full, the cup is half full. The pessimist says the cup is half empty. The engineer says how much is in the cup. I'll change it around to a banker or to anybody to whom numbers are important. And that's kind of connected to the bird with the head in the middle and two wings, balance, the whole, I'm in the middle, and I want to see both sides. Because both sides threaten me, because they block out the other.
Thanks.
I also trust dogs, because dogs are not sneaky, usually. They may try to steal food, things like that, but they don't kind of draw you to one side and then have another dog steal the food. People are much sneakier, more self-interest than dogs. After dogs come some people.
I don't see anybody else with their hand up, either in Zoom or waving it around. Oh, now we do. Okay. Michael Abramson.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think you put it very well, the psychological reasons what make people not trusting science. But the question is that as a society as a whole, we need to rely on science.
Yeah,
To some degree. And what are your thoughts about how to close this gap between the interests of individual people and the interests of society as a whole? And another question is that maybe there is some intermediate step which is needed here, that at first people have to develop this trust to each other, including the trust to scientists and to rational arguments in general, because maybe this is another problem, that we don't have this enough trust overall between people in our society. It also has the trust to science.
Well, we're kind of stuck with systems. By systems, I mean the particular way democracy is run in this country, using the country as an example. We're not quite free to say, I'm not anyway, free to say, well, let's change this and change that. I'm more concerned with acceptance of what is, this isness, and pushing it, because as a scientist, I believe what I see, and it will annoy them if you use this little thing which you may have used also. I believe what I see, but I don't see what I believe. That's very nice, and most of you might agree with that, but it's annoying to those people who do see what they believe, who have to, who are driven to, and whose sanity depends on it. I guess now at my age, all I can do is behave logically in my sense, which is following the things that the proofs that I believe. It starts out with distrust. I don't trust people. Basically, it depends on the people and what the subject is. So I'm free to believe science because it's what I see. But I don't expect other people to be as free, and they may be happier, better off. I don't know what the aim of things is for them, but they're not in the same position. Do I think I can change this part of the world? Probably not. Even if I was given say 3 million followers on Twitter, or whatever the exposure is, I don't think so. I think it's just not my belief, but it's too deeply ingrained. The need for make-believe is very basic. I'd like to see that studied more. I work with industry people that don't want to look at it. Their attitude is whatever sells the product, we'll believe. And I work, as I implied, in packaging, and I get people who are obsessed with degradation. And I will point out the chemical dangers of degrading in the soil. I like inert. People are obsessed with recycling, and I will ask the question, what is the energy requirement to do it? Are we better off? And because they don't want to deal with the issue of let's not use it. That disrupts the economy. There's an answer to that too. I'm not giving answers, I'm giving annoying questions. That I've gotten used to. That's a related and I hope significant but long answer to your comment.
Okay, we had Senna and Alex.
Yeah, but I had a couple of observations, I guess. One of them is that a lot of our myths and so on, they're human level stories, and as people we have special interests, and I think that's why people like the idea of magic and the gods, because it explains things more as a matter of personality. And I think there's something similar to that in science fiction stories, where we want to travel faster than light, because if several lifetimes pass between when we go out to do something and when we get there, have a chance to do it, it's hard to follow the story. And I think that's the main appeal of faster than light. It's not a human scale anymore.
That assumes that light has a fixed and known speed.
Yeah.
Before 1890, there's a story about how the speed of light was first measured, which is kind of hard to believe. It was done in England with mirrors and not very accurately. But before then, I don't think anybody would have talked about the speed of light.
No, I grew up believing it was infinite. Just it's there.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people today think it's there, and if you tell them it's 186,000, I think it's miles a second, whatever. It's 8 minutes to the sun.
Yeah,
I think that's one of two ways I just define it. But it is now. It still asks another question: what is it that's moving? And I have heard, and I agree with the things that are most mystical are the things that are the biggest and the smallest. Because I can understand starting out as a chemist, there is an oxygen atom, there is a nitrogen atom. Those of you who don't know this, a very important number, 78% of the air is nitrogen, 21% is oxygen, most of the rest is argon. If you deal with carbon dioxide, very small percentage, which is significant, and don't believe too much of the popular image. It was to anybody who's worried about carbon dioxide or the carbon factor or the carbon footprint, I suggest that they look at their soda stream, if they have one, or a bottle of carbonated beverage, and realize how, and that becomes very important. Carbon dioxide is extremely soluble in water. Too bad the fish need oxygen because they have to work very hard to get it. But carbon dioxide is soluble in water, less so with higher pressures, less so with low temperatures. And to understand the carbon dioxide interaction to the atmosphere, you've got to include the oceans and understand their behavior. I'm not any more of a scientist than that. I couldn't tell you how important or put some numbers on it. But it's too easy. There is a drive in civilized people to assume that we cause what is. And that's where that's getting, because there's a lot of feeling that we can do something about it if we drive less. Well, I think we should drive less, or we do less. Some people talk about doing more with less. I talk about doing less with less, and do not get warmly welcomed with that.
I was also interested in your trying to find the right word in a translation, because it's interesting how those things go. And one of the things that struck me a while back was that in Spanish, when they talk about how much you've earned, they use the word ganar, which also means to win, which you do in a crowd.
Yeah, ganar, yeah, and desires are ganas.
Yes, whereas we say this is our salary, it kind of implies that this is what we've earned, this is what we're due. It's just what you got, really.
Yeah. But I speak Spanish. I don't know if I use the word destacarse, and there is no direct, easy English translation of that. There are a few others like that, but I didn't think about the ganas and ganar. And ganado was cattle also, so your doings are your cows. I don't know where that origin came from.
I think it's gain. Probably the same root as gain.
To gain, which is Latin, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Spanish would be Latin, but English, to anybody who hasn't heard this analogy, I can give you for amusement and information. English is a Germanic tree with Latin leaves and Greek fruit.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons it's so hard to learn is because a lot of roots you've got two ways of saying things or three ways. But they're not all equal. It isn't a mixture. You haven't taken 7% of Greek words and 50 of Germanic and 43 of Latin and thrown them into a pot and stirred them. There is a tree structure.
But you get words like television, which is a Greek-Latin hybrid.
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
I say television is a Greek prefix with a Latin.
Oh, yeah. Tele is far and vision is... Yeah, there are Christmas carols that have a name. It's called macaronic, where you have two different languages in the same. It's usually Latin and English here, in the same thing, and where you have two languages feeding a given word. I didn't think about television. Those things are amusing and good to know.
Yeah, one other observation I wanted to make is when you talked about accepting the truth, and and it revolves around the word faith. And faith generally implies a belief in the supernatural, but
yeah, it's believing the impossible
for yourself. And I like to think that, or if I ask what my faith is, I like to think, or I believe that I can accept the truth and still be able to face the world.
Yeah.
I don't know whether to call that faith or not, but it's kind of demanding.
Well, anybody who is surviving in the world is doing that.
Yeah.
But they alter the truth to fit their needs.
Yes, I just don't see how I've altered the truth, but that goes without saying, I suppose.
Well, selective balancing may be a better word than altering. I don't like to think that I've altered the truth, but I have balanced and taken certain things that bother me and distract myself from them.
Yeah.
Old age is an example. I am here's a very practical one. Some of you are very familiar with the game Scrabble. I am, think of a good word, strongly encouraged to play this game every other day at about 5 o'clock. Now I focus. When I play something like that, I'm very focused. I'm very intense. I'm pretty good at it, but so is she. And we get good games, and I see it as a distraction from the very elegant jail I'm in, really. I don't mind it, but I see it as a distraction because it preoccupies me, and you can measure how strongly it preoccupies me because I don't even look at my email. This is the mark of distraction for many of us.
Yeah, I'm the same way with the morning paper. You do the crossword puzzle, you do the Sudoku, you do...
I'm a numbers person, but I have trouble with the Sudokus. And I used to do more puzzles.
They're getting harder, I notice.
Well,
I don't know why.
I don't doubt that. There was something I was going to... Oh, yeah. This applies, I think, more generally. One of the problems in playing Scrabble is who is your authority? What is your authority?
Mm-hmm.
What dictionary? There is a Scrabble dictionary. We have a very old issue, and it doesn't have very many modern words. But there is a modern one online. And do you look up words? And how much time do you allow to look up words? And who is the authority? And what if something is in Merriam-Webster and not in the Scrabble dictionary? And the Scrabble dictionary is sanitized in that certain words, most of the four-letter words, are omitted. You can use them, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. If it fits on the board and it's a known word, you can use it. But if you follow the dictionary, you can't. So the question of what is the authority becomes very important. And it becomes important in interpersonal relations between the players. So I made my own solution is I don't care who wins. And I'm not going to tell other people who your authority is. I will accept an authority of that dictionary because it's online and it's definable. And I needed a definable authority rather than be my own. And even relate that to what I've said or not. But I think it's an interesting example. The fact that I needed the definable authority. She didn't. It was more important to have a flexible authority to fit in the thing that he wants to fit into, and sometimes finds it. And if it's not definable in any dictionary, we agree, okay, can't be played.
I was looking for the word themselves in the singular. It's not in my dictionary. I'm wondering if it's going to be accepted.
Okay, we have another question lined up.
Yeah, let me pass it on then.
Yeah.
What didn't I understand?
I don't know. We have Dick Hewitson.
Okay. Hello?
Dick, you're unmuted?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now hear you.
Okay, thank you. Two things that you said that I really appreciated. One of them was when there's a disagreement, to ask the other person why. I find in so many disagreements, people aren't interested in what the other person really has to say because we're so convinced that we are right. The other thing which I never heard before was your left wing, right wing bird with the head. I just thought that was marvelous. And one of the problems I have with so many discussions I get involved in is that people use terms, and most of the people that any of us deal with, the bad people are right wing, or the bad people are Republican, and it's kind of like we're exonerated because they're wrong. And I have a real problem, for instance, when people say, well, it's the Republicans' fault. My reaction is, well, yeah, then what are the Democrats doing about it? But there's this tendency to just blame the other side.
Well, this is the polarization or polarity that people find comfort in.
Yeah.
And I'm on your side. I mean, I want to see.
Oh, I think it's terrible.
Well, I think I said already, and it's worth saying again, that when you ask a person, when you try to find out why they believe what they do, they may resent you for it.
Oh, yes.
But it challenges them to ask you why you believe what you do, and it opens up the field, and they don't want to play the game.
Yeah.
Or the game threatens them. But I have to see it at a distance sometimes and not tell them that I'm looking at it. I'm listening. I'm seeing it. There's plenty of words out there, and it's related to the Scrabble game. Words matter.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. And thank you for all of you in whatever ways you did invite me and allow me to feel quite free in expressing what I wanted to say. I'm going to save a copy too. We'll have to ask you how I get this version.
Yeah, we'll have it'll be posted on YouTube and some other places. I don't see any other hands up right now, so I'm going to move on to general discussion. Okay.
That's among you for whatever you want to say.
Yeah, so everybody should be able to unmute themselves if they wish to speak up. Just remember, if you have multiple people talking at the same time, you can't really hear anybody, so be careful not to step over any other people. And I've had in the past problems with people having like some background noise. You may get muted if we're hearing a lot of background noise from your video, so just be aware.
I'd like to make a comment that I've made before, and that is to try to avoid the use of the word belief, especially when talking about religion to other people, because it opens up the possibility for them to say, well, I believe in Catholicism or God or whatever, and you don't. And you're entitled to your belief, and I'm entitled. So rather than say I believe A or B, just say I follow logic and rationality. And that leads me to certain understandings. Don't use the word belief.
I agree with you on that. And one thing, I brought this up before, but one thing that really bothers me is when I hear somebody say, I believe in evolution. Because I don't think that's the right word.
That's exactly the point. I mean, all of what Darwin did indicates that evolution was real.
Sure.
Am I qualified or to add something to that?
Sure.
I'm unmuted, right? Yeah. I want to point out to the word in. After the word believe. When people believe in things, that implies the impossible.
Yeah.
So it's different to say, I believe the sun tomorrow will be warmer than today.
Yeah.
But the in is the comfort or not.
Good point.
Thank you for pointing that out.
That's my wordsmithy.
Well, the trouble is with the news in our political structure right now is that we have people that don't believe in facts. So, if you have to say, I believe in critical thinking and logic, well, they don't believe in facts, or they question all facts, so therefore our logic is in question.
Well, I don't think they question all facts. They question the ones that contradict what they want to believe in, or want to believe.
That's true. Like you choose to believe a glass of wine is healthy because that's the last study you read.
Oh, food is a wonderful example of belief systems. It kind of crosses over all religions.
Yeah, I refuse to accept the idea that wine is bad for you.
That what is bad?
Wine.
Well, the engineer side of me, or I gave you my little proverb already, says depends on how much.
Mm-hmm.
And of what, and sometimes when.
Yeah.
Like when you're driving.
It's always the when.
Well, that counts, but sometimes we're in a position where when we're okay, we're at home, there are people around, you're not driving a car, so when is less important than when. That's sometimes when is important. But how much always, even asking how much bothers people. I get this all the time. Not all the time is an exaggeration. I get it often enough that I begin to feel asking for numbers is sort of like asking people to undress.
By the way, before the word I think you didn't hear was themselves, the singular of themselves, and even though they has been used as an acceptable pronoun for somebody for like 200 years, the grammarians still don't accept it.
So themself doesn't count.
So they don't put themselves in the dictionary. It's illogical.
Oh, that's interesting because English is a selectively gendered language.
Yeah.
And so is German, so is Latin, so is Greek, all in different ways.
Most European languages, Indo-European languages, I think that.
Yeah, how we deal with the word "you" is, of course, interesting. Both German and Spanish have the familiar form, which is used for God, of course, to create this bond of the familiar parent.
Also, we seem to have lost the pronoun "one," and I like the German variation of "you are what you eat," which is "man ist, was man ist."
Yeah, the "man" as someone is well, we have it, but we don't.
But also the fact that is ist and eats is ist with two S's. You can't.
Oh, two ists. I think there's two S's in one of them, and there's one S in the other. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you just say it, you can't hear the difference.
Yeah. At least was. Yeah, and well, was also has a meaning with two S's and with one S and das. And that they got that separate letter, that funny-looking B for the double S.
The S-set.
S-set, yeah. Well, that's maybe its origin. I get 12:31, so I'm not going to say anything.
Wise decision.
Yeah, usually the discussion can go all the way to 1 o'clock.
All right. Well,
if there's enough of a general discussion, we maybe talk.
Okay. I don't want to say anybody else shouldn't say anything, but I'm just trying to keep to my borders.
Another punctuation puzzle I saw was kind of neat. It began Smith, where Jones, and then the word had appears 11 times.
Yeah, I've seen that too, and I couldn't figure it out.
What was the first part of that?
Smith, where Jones, and then the word had appears 11 times. Had, yes.
Yeah.
Followed by the professor's approval, which is Smith, where Jones had the professor's approval.
Okay. I got the idea. I don't know how many hads that would be.
I counted.
That's like the Spanish one. Como.
3 of them I can understand. 4 words is a stutter.
How do I eat? I eat like I eat.
Yeah.
No.
I forgot the hows. Also,
Well, if you write it, there are accents that could distinguish you there.
Yeah.
I had things because English doesn't have an accent. I saw that and I looked at it. I'm sure there's an answer, but I'm not going to try to find it. And you gave it. Good. Accents help.
That's interesting.
There was kind of the opposite of a punctuation problem that I heard, which was I don't remember the details on it, but it's just like repeating buffalo like 5 or 6 times or more.
I think I saw that too. But I did. Well, just recently, I was looking around for these things. I don't know how it kept.
Yeah, so that whole thing is like there's no punctuation, but it's like a valid sentence in English. It actually means something.
I guess buffalo is a plural, and it can be a verb to mean to deceive.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's as far as I can go with that one.
And then there's a city named Buffalo.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. That's another one.
Yeah. So.
Well, Buffalo are the buffalo in the city of Buffalo.
Right.
Yeah. And we got 3 of them. I said, should we stop here? It's funny that this city so far east gets named Buffalo. I don't know why, but maybe there's Buffalo there.
I understand that that is not the origin. That it was a corruption of Belle Fleuve for the beautiful river.
Belle Fleuve, all right, the French were up there.
Yeah. Now that's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true or not.
Well, I'm going to accept that as a possible, but not probable. We didn't get into the meaning of probability and the quantification of probability, which is what I might say about science. It may be capable of being wrong, but given its record, I'm going to stake my life on it.
Yeah.
Which means I am not going to take hydrochloroquine.
There's a story, I don't know if it's true, but I kind of like it. It's the origin of the word gringo.
Green grow the rushes or green?
Green grow
the violets.
Yeah. I heard something that, well.
I don't think so. No.
I see we all like words. Words are neat.
Yeah, they are our tools.
Yeah. I sometimes think that the big advantage we have over crows is we've got hands and we've got language.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have language.
I don't like words.
You don't like words?
I don't like words.
I'm surprised to hear you say that.
Well, I would make a painting about it, but it would take a little while.
Why?
Why don't I like words? I don't know. I'm not a word person, really.
It's like one philosopher in a conversation with another one. The one made a comment that he thought that solipsism was so simple and rational. He's surprised more people don't accept it. He says, I'm surprised to hear you say that. Why are you telling me? The mere fact that you're telling me that means you don't accept it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple theory, but we have no idea what to do with it.
I can tell you why I like words or do words is because it was the tool available to me to survive, particularly as a young kid. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have status. I had strength in a society where it didn't matter. It meant that nobody pushed me around, but I wasn't allowed to push anybody else around. So what's left? Music, I was good at, but nobody cared. And I wasn't that good. So words became the tool, and I was good enough at it that that's when I ended up doing a lot of.
I guess I can put out on a previous project I was on at work, we were doing artificial intelligence stuff, and it was all language, so natural language processing. And at first it was like, whenever something unique or weird came up where it's like, well, what does this really mean? What did this user mean when they put, type this in? It was always like, oh, well, we have to deal with this. And you came up with all sorts of weird problems that way. But at first it was interesting. And then like later it's just like, oh no, yet another problem, another ambiguous statement that we got to try and figure out how to deal with. that kind of turned me off words for, probably for good.
There is an article once about when they're trying to teach computers language, and they teach them rules, but you get sentences that followed rules that were hard to interpret. You could talk about, the cat the dog chased, but then you could have the rat, the cat the dog chased ate, and you could build that up with a string of nouns followed by a string of verbs that would be very hard to follow, but it wouldn't violate any rules.
Yeah, the one of the ones that stood out to me was this project I was on. We were doing like jobs and like career type stuff, so career searching type things. So when somebody typed in basically mobile, right? What did that mean? And so you'd think it would mean related to jobs, like you had experience with mobile technology or something like that. But there's also a city in Alabama called Mobile, which is spelled exactly the same way. Yeah. And that, causes some problems. And there's just tons of little problems like that where two different words, or a word that's spelled exactly the same has completely different meanings, or different phrases have like completely different meanings based on a context that's not really like clear.
This confounds the English learner because there's so many of those. Everything is context.
Yeah. And well, in this case, it was the computers that were trying to teach how to figure this out.
That's the problem. There is function to confusion. Sometimes people speak, leaving things open, leaving possibilities open by the choice of their words. And are maybe conscious or unconscious, avoiding the commitment to what the words say. There are people who don't like email or even text, and who do telephoning. One of the people, a very good friend of mine, it's almost impossible to get an answer. I send him an email and no answer. I'll call him up and I'll get something like, the mailbox is full. He doesn't want mail. But I know the number to call. There's another telephone number that he will answer.
Yeah. Any other comments? Questions?
Well, what you're talking about with these words is the ambiguity. And I learned once upon a time that there is a lot of ambiguity in the language. But if you didn't have ambiguity, it would be very inefficient. It'd take longer to talk, and it would take more words to write it. Yeah. So it's a trade-off here.
You'd have to qualify everything you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it's context. One of the tapes we had listened to a while back on language mentioned that English doesn't use suffixes or any indication to tell what part of speech it is, whether it's the subject or the object or so on. And there are languages that do that and don't specify the word order either. So there's really no difference between the man bit the dog and the dog bit the man. But, if anything is odd happening here, you'd probably make that known. It's not like it's a problem in communication.
Well, there is a preferred order, so that if you tell me the dog bit the man or the man bit the dog, we know that dogs bite men and men seldom bite dogs. But suppose you have two animals whose names are 1 and 2. 1 bit 2, 2 bit 1. It's which one? Then it's word order. Word order doesn't matter, but isn't governing. I don't know how I know the languages. I am very grateful. One of the things I told my mother when she was alive is to thank her for having me born in this country to learn English just naturally, natively in school, rather than having to come here from another country and learn it, as some of you may have. I mean, I'm talking to a group of people. To those of you who have learned English as a second language or a third language, it's admirable. I'm the admirer.
Yeah, we have a lot of expressions that don't really make sense. You just have to know what it means. And we do things with prepositions, with up and down and so on, that are just there for emphasis.
Well, no, some of those are Germanic constructions with Aufstehen and whatever, those German speakers. The up does mean something, and it's often stuck at the end somewhere.
We eat things up and we wolf them down. And
all right, that's a compound verb. Upheating would be, if you could say it as an infinitive. We separate them in English. They don't in some other languages. But upheating is not the same as heating.
Yeah, the up would mean thoroughly, I suppose. Which we have a good word for. It's just that it's too long and. I think we seem to be running down.
I was going to say, see all these confusing words? This is why you should hate words.
That's very different from running.
You know which foot comes next?
What comes next?
You know which foot comes next. When you're running, you know, all right, this foot
running.
here. There's no two ways about it.
Well, but how do you differentiate running from hopping or skipping?
Well, we could do it, obviously.
Well, what about if you have 4 legs?
Oh, you have the problem of the 19th century photographers who had to find out, does a horse have all 4 legs off the ground at any one point?
Right.
I think the language is ambiguous on purpose sometimes. For example, take a lot of the U.S. Constitution and its amendments, and a lot of it is subject to interpretation.
Yeah, I wonder also some of the words which interpretation of the intent is one thing, but the word meanings themselves might have changed, which has nothing to do with the intent of the person, of the writers.
That's true.
So,
and I think that follows through to our whole system of laws. I think maybe some of them are written a bit ambiguous intentionally so that they can be interpreted different ways as the situation presents itself.
I suspect some of them sound odd because there's a standard for being precise also. I hope. I like to think that.
There's a phrase I learned a long time ago, I think it was from the Devil's Dictionary, which was, marriage is triumph of hope over experience. And that sentence actually makes sense whether you're an optimist or a pessimist.
Or an engineer.
By the way, an engineer says the glass is twice as big as it needs to be.
I've heard that too. But that's making a judgment. And my answer of how much is in it is getting data.
is the physicist that says the glass is totally full, half liquid phase, half gaseous phase.
Well, I heard that one.
There's a T-shirt that has that on it. It's always full of water and or gas.
Yeah, well, see, that I'm okay with, because air is, to me, I've started to say that before, a bunch of molecules. And I've done a lot of teaching of simple chemistry to non-chemists. And I have cartoons where each of the oxygen has 2 arms and hydrogen has 1 arm, and nitrogen has 3 and sometimes 5, and carbon has 4. And then I put up a picture of a gorilla, because the gorilla feet are able to hold on to things. You have to be able to see the gorilla foot. It could be any monkey, chimpanzee, or anything, but the gorilla is most impressive. And the gorilla is the carbon atom. And all organic chemistry is based on that gorilla being able to hold 4 things at once. And if you don't understand that, I don't know. I don't know where to go from there, but I try to simplify it that way.